Well, hello and welcome back to the very latest episode of my Love Machine podcast. Now, so many people come to me and say, James, I do not know what's going wrong. I'm making bad choices. I'm repeating bad patterns. I'm picking the wrong guys. What do I do? And because this is such a common problem that I experience, I've got a wonderful guest on my podcast today, all the way from America. I've got the wonderful Abby Medcalf. She is a TED Talk speaker. She is a dating expert. She's absolutely amazing. I'm going to let her introduce herself in a second. But today we're going to be talking about the real reasons why relationships fail, why things have been going wrong. So Abby, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. I'm from across the pond. It's quite fabulous.
It is. What time is it with you right now?
It is 9 in the morning.
9 in the morning. I do appreciate how someone can look so amazing at 9 in the morning.
You're very kind.
I really should start using the video for these podcasts. Maybe I will at some point. But I know that we spoke about a week ago, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, and we had a great chat. We thought this is a great topic. And it's something that you've covered before in your TED Talk. So can you tell all my listeners a bit more about yourself and what you do, please?
Sure. So I'm a psychologist. I call myself a relationship maven, and I'm a nice Jewish girl from New York City, and a maven is someone who knows a lot about something, basically, or thinks they do, and that's what I've been doing for a long time, is really helping people in their relationships. And I have a podcast called Relationships Made Easy. I have an Amazon #1 best-selling book called Be Happily Married, even if your partner won't do a thing, which is good even if you're not married. And I see people, also, I still do that. And I still do corporate work. I was in the corporate world for a long time, helping executives in trouble. So, and guess what? It was usually trouble at work means trouble at home. And, because we're not separate people, we're the same people everywhere. We're having trouble everywhere. And it's just iterated and changed over the years. But relationships have been my jam forever.
And you must enjoy it to do it.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I'm like a nosy, again, I'm a bossy Jewish mother. That's what I'm doing all the time. I'm bossing people around. It's great.
Sounds like my wife.
Yeah, there you go. It's how we do it.
Someone's got to, haven't they? Mm-hmm. They do. So we're going to talk today about the common problems people have and why things are doomed and things aren't working. Mm-hmm. I think bad choices and repeating patterns are a very, very common part of this. So what issues do you see predominantly that people make, particularly women?
So, and just what you said is exactly really what the problem is in a lot of ways, that I hear it a lot from women. I hear from men too, but I'll hear, men suck. All men just want this. All men only think that. Men this, men that. These sort of global statements. And there's no more good men left. I hear a lot, I got the last good man. I've heard that from so many ways. Oh, you got the last good one, Abby. I'm like, I think there's a couple more. There's billions of people on the planet, I'm going to assume. So just saying that, what happens is that you are setting yourself up to fail. That is the first thing before we even talk about what happens when you're actually with the person. But and I mentioned this to you, our conscious brains process information at a rate of 50 bits per second. And our unconscious brains process information at a rate of 11 million bits per second. So if I'm sitting there, it's amazing, right? So people don't hear what you say, they hear what you mean. So if I'm sitting on my first date with this guy, but unconsciously, even a little consciously, maybe consciously, I'm thinking, oh, okay, this time, this one seems different. He seemed really great, but there's a but because of my past failures. So either that's conscious or unconscious. Unconsciously, I'm thinking the things I've said, men suck, all the good ones are taken, love just doesn't seem to work for me. It works for other people, but not for me. All that's going on. So as I'm talking to this guy with all my hope and all my nice little, whatever's in my conscious brain, he is picking up on the unconscious messages that I don't think this is going to work. And so, law of attraction, all the things we talk about are really underpinned by science. This is your brain. This is what's happening in your brain. And everyone knows this feeling because you have, walked down a street and seen someone and they hadn't said anything to you, but you crossed the street. You're like, I don't want to be in that person's presence. Or you've been at work and some everybody's been talking to you and they're saying good things, but you know they're full of it. This is that. This is you, that 11 million bits at work, and people get it about you. When your conscious and your unconscious brains aren't aligned, people, they are picking that up. So that is just number one. When you're walking out the door, you're kind of set up to keep seeing the same thing over and over.
It's self-sabotage, isn't it, really? That's
Mm-hmm.
what I say. I see this a lot with all my clients. They expect things to go wrong. They can't really believe that person is interested in them. They don't know their own value as well. Do you see that quite a bit?
Yep. And let me give you this. So there's another part of our brain, and I think I've heard you talk about it in the podcast before. I'm trying to remember, but it's called our reticular activating system, or our RAS for short. And your RAS is a filter between your conscious and your subconscious mind. So basically, whenever you think something consciously, men suck, your RAS sends that as an order to your subconscious to look for men screwing up, to look for them sucking in a bad way.
The clues, isn't it?
Yeah. And what's important is that it will also filter out anything that doesn't match. So when I meet the nice guy, when the great guy seems too good for me is saying the nice things, I'm missing them. I'm not picking up on them. And everyone has had this if they've ever bought a new car. If you've ever bought a car and you start seeing that car everywhere on the road, you know how that is. Suddenly it's like they were making that car more of that car.
Yeah,
that's your RAS. Yeah. That's your RAS. You're consciously thinking about, a gray BMW, and then it sends it as an order to look for gray BMWs, and you see them everywhere. They didn't just start making more of them. It's how it works. And it's filtering out all the other cars that don't really match that. You're not seeing as much of them. You're seeing more of this. And that's what's working in your relationships. And you're just any kind of talking or dialogues with anybody all the time.
It's true. When you have a baby and you're in that situation going through the whole pregnancy, you see pregnant people everywhere. Yep. And you spot them. Normal life, you don't really notice them, but you're right. Nope. The brain looks out for clues. And likewise, the brain will look out for red flags rather than looking for reasons things are going to go right. So you look out for all these things and think, well, they're not treating me the right way. They're not spotting the good behavior. That You're right. They're looking for the bad behavior, or things that could be interpreted in that way. Right.
I think that's it too. I think people interpret things. We like to define things a lot, so, he didn't lean into this pre-COVID. I would hear this. Well, it was the first date and he didn't lean in to like hug me or kiss me or, and so that means he's not really interested. He didn't like how I looked. He immediately we define things. And when we start talking to someone or we get into a relationship in any way, we start defining things. Oh, he didn't call back within a day. It means this. He left his dirty sock on the floor. It means he thinks I'm a maid and he doesn't respect me. It's like, no, he was tired. He doesn't care about socks. Like it's got nothing to do with you necessarily. It's very rare that it does, but we set definitions, we decide what something means. And again, we're always filling in that blank. Our brain has yet another thing called our confirmation bias, which is basically that we try to prove ourselves right all the time. So again, you're going to see evidence, just like you said, of things that aren't necessarily true, but your brain will fill in the blanks and prove yourself right. And that's that self-sabotage you're talking about.
It's not always thinking bad things either, is it? Because a lot of people say, well, he hasn't contacted me. He must be really busy. Or he's told me he's busy. And really, they're looking for reasons, justifying their bad behavior. So it's the same thing, isn't it? But it's not always them thinking the worst. They like to sort of trick themselves. Oh, he can't possibly not be interested in me. Therefore, he must be busy, or he's ill, or he's hit by a bus, or his grand died, something like that. So
there is a constant, I was thinking that when you said the red flags. It's interesting. I think people think something is a red flag often when it's not, and then ignore the things I think they should be looking at that are red flags. Mm-hmm. And like you just said, there's a way that, again, we're proving ourselves right, whatever that is. So if you think deep down that you don't really deserve a great guy, let's say if I'm talking to a woman, and you meet a guy who's not great, because that's what'll keep showing up, but you'll ignore the flag showing you he's not great for you, that he's not a good match for you. It's that same thing. It is. You're proving yourself right. It's just in a bad way.
because sometimes you haven't had good experiences and therefore you expect things to go wrong and you accept them as normal. So guys that are maybe ghosting you, abusing you, whatever it might be, or not treating you with respect, they just expect that in life. And therefore they think if a guy's doing the same thing, it must be their fault. I think an awful lot of people, I haven't really touched upon this a lot recently in my podcast. A lot of people don't really love themselves or feel, like you just said, that someone would be interested in them. This is why they self-sabotage. So many of my clients have this issue. I always ask them now, I say, what makes you special? Why would someone date you? And beyond the superficial and the generic statements like, oh, I'm a good person, I'm a fun guy, or I'm really kind and I'm loyal, it needs more than that. You need to work on this and be true, because that's another reason things go wrong, isn't it? You almost like you're doomed for failure right from the start if you don't really expect it. Because like you say, people will expect to see these bad things and it's never going to work out. But I have to ask you as well, how do men and women have a good conversation in terms without nagging somebody in relationships? Because nagging is a very, very common thing. I watched your TED talk today, and I was bringing to mind that these arguments couples do have in relationships. About, you mentioned about where the fork goes in the dishwasher. We're not going to start that conversation. The thing is, here's a question for you: do you pre-wash the fork before you eat it? That's a question, isn't it? Because otherwise, you're putting dirty stuff into the dishwasher, but it's not going to be running away. But you mentioned how men and women both put forks in differently upside down, depending on these things. But what sort of ways can they do this without really complaining to each other?
Well, again, there's that. I say a lot, don't sack your relationships. Don't offer suggestions, give advice, or criticize. SAC.
That sounds very easy and hard to do.
Exactly. So, right. A lot of things are simple, but not, and it is easier as you practice it, but really think of that. So much, if you want your partner to put away, if the dishes aren't getting put away and you feel like you're always the one doing it, that's a separate thing, because that's all the competition that I talk about. People always think the number one problem in their relationship is communication, but it's not. It's competition, because we say things like, it's your turn to put away the dishes, and you spent this much money on something, so now I get to spend this much money on something, or you
saw your friends, or
now I get to see mine. We do all this back and forth, this tit for tat stuff all the time. And when you're doing that, you're setting yourself up on opposite teams. And I'm not going to want you to win. It means I lose. There's this way that happens. And then we're not happy for our partners. Oh, great, I'm cleaning the kitchen while you sit around, watching football, which is different for the two of us. But football's different in each country. But, you're doing that instead of maybe that I'm happy that you're relaxing and doing something great. And maybe I'm not saying that you should toil around while your partner does nothing all the time, but I'm saying, if you really look at your life overall, are you getting your needs met? And when we start looking at that keeping score, well, I did this, so you should do this. And I was cleaning, so you should be cleaning too. Or I was miserable, so you should be miserable. That is the worst thing to think. You are a shared resource with whoever you get into a relationship with. So if you're taking it from your partner, you're taking from yourself. And that's the big mistake they make. They're like, well, I'm doing this thing I don't like, so you should be miserable too. It's like, no, they should be. If you have to do a thing you don't like, it's even better if they have something they are liking and they feel energized and excited. So they'll have more energy when you're feeling depleted. How great. Then you could maybe ask for a foot rub afterwards and get one, because they're in a great place and they're in a generous, expansive mode. But when we start doing that thing, and I'm watching everything you're doing, which is always less than what I'm doing, it's always not as good or not as much. Think about it. That's a fear-based thing that I'm getting taken advantage of, that somehow you're not showing me you love me enough. And no relationship is made better by fear, ever, ever. And you can't base a love relationship on fear, for sure. So if you're going in worried and jealous and anxious and I'm going to take advantage of and all those things, then of course, like I just said, from your brain, all those things will show up without a doubt. And you will, because you think to yourself, well, I know, because I'm right. I keep seeing it. And I'm telling you, you're skewed. You don't realize that your brain is not showing you the truth. You think it is, but it's not. And when you start to shift where you're focused, you will absolutely positively see more of that. It's what happens because, again, it's science. It's not, some made up woo-woo spiritual crap. It is science that's what will happen. So you really, you have to start. I always say, do you want to be correct or effective? So you can be right all day that you're right about men suck, but is that effective? Is that getting you what you want? Is that getting you a warm, loving, great relationship? So I would say, let's be effective. And how can I be effective with this? Well, I can do what Abby's saying. I can start focusing on something different. I can remember times when men were there for me, were good, were great. And this is true for men thinking of women, and that could be your brother or your dad or a friend. It doesn't always have to be a love relationship, but you can see, could have been a coworker or a boss. Oh, men could be Gandhi, you could be like big, I don't care. But that it proves that there are good people. There are good men or women. So there's enough to get your brain attached to, oh, maybe I have just been sort of, in the wrong pool. How do I start to shift what I'm focusing and looking at? And that's really where all the magic is, because the nagging, I always say, you shouldn't nag about anything that you could hire someone to do. I did not, you don't marry your husband because he mows the lawn well. Like, that's not a reason you get married. You get married, I love my man so much because he makes me feel special and cherished and adored. It looks at me like I'm magic. That's why I'm married to him. That's why I'm with this man. Not because he's really great at fixing furniture. So but that's what we tend to nag about. And we nag about those things, not because we're not feeling cherished and loved. That's the only reason that shows up. So why are you nagging about that? You should be talking about the other things, how we can show up for each other, how I can show up in this way. Where can you meet me in this, right? There's a whole different way to look at that as opposed to the transactional stuff, which is the competition. Well, you did that. You didn't mow the lawn and I did that. It takes me more hours to cook than for you to take care of the outside of the house, or whatever delineations you have around work. And that's where things really fall apart. We are so focused on the wrong things when you're nagging and complaining and going after that stuff.
Completely agree with you. You mentioned something just now that stuck in my mind. You said that he looks at me like I'm magic. And that is such a wonderful phrase, I've got to say, that everyone wants that, don't they, in a partner?
Yeah. Yeah.
But how do you get that? How do you find somebody if you don't believe that you're ever going to meet somebody? Where do you go? Well, how did you meet your partner, can I ask?
What's funny? I met my current and my ex-husband with
your current husband.
My current husband. But my ex, this is how long ago it was, with an ad in the paper.
Right. Old school.
And my current online with one of those little matchmaking kind of sites, right? Oh, yeah. I am that gal because I believe I've been in wonderful relationships like my whole, you know what I mean? Like, granted, they were sicker when I was younger because I didn't know what I know now, but I'm someone who's been in relationships over and over. Like, I know how to do them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I expected to have them. Mm-hmm. And so that was one. The second part was expecting to have good ones, right? To really like, oh, I could be with these really good men who are really wonderful, who, and again, it was me changing me. People think it's so funny. Once I'm in a relationship, I'll be happy. Once I get that promotion, I'll be happy. Once I, get the thing, I'll be happy. And the research shows, Sean Achor from Harvard has amazing research in this. The research shows it's the opposite. People who feel happy get promotions, get great relationships, get the other thing. So you can't have it backwards. You have to get that it has to be you. So yeah, I did some therapy. I've walked on hot coals with Anthony Robbins. Wow. I have done EST. I have done LifeSpring. I've done them all. There's nothing I haven't tried to prove to myself that I could have a different life, because I've never given up on myself. And I continue to do things to try to better myself. But I will say that as I focus on the magic in my man, he focuses on the magic in me. I think he's incredible. I feel like the luckiest woman alive all the time. Yeah. And that shows up with how he looks at me.
I love that. I love it. That's how all people should be, isn't it? All couples should be that way. But
yeah. You both should feel like you got a deal. You know what I mean? Gary jokes about that. He'll say, it's great when both of you feel like you're kind of getting over on the other one. Like, oh, wow, he doesn't know how much. And I do, I've got a man who's fit, gorgeous, and has a great job and all his teeth and some hair in his late 50s. We're in our late 50s, right? That's a unicorn, baby, like that. that's something to say. And he could get a 20-year-old. Of course he could. Like, I see women flirting with him all the time. He's so oblivious. It's very funny. But it's a real amazing thing to get that this is a great person you're with. And I feel as you're with someone over time, and we've been together many years, as you're with someone over time, it does not have to be a downhill slide. It absolutely, positively can be an uphill, wonderful trend. Yeah. And so I shouldn't say uphill, wonderful trend. It can be uplifting. You can create more closeness, more togetherness. And there is something about novelty, which is big, right? Kind of creating the relationship anew. I feel like I'm always re-upping in my relationships. All of them, my friendships, my work, everything. Meeting you was like, oh, I am like re-upping. I'm like, oh, who's this guy? Oh, I like this guy. Oh, I like talking to him. Who is this? How is this working? Always be thinking that you're re-upping and bringing new energy and being that person you want to be and bringing that all the time. I want to always be my best, regardless of who I'm around.
You're right. You should never get complacent in any form of relationship. Nope. Once you do, you stop trying. You get bored stiff, and then things don't work out. And then you start arguing then, don't you? Yep. I always say never stop dating, never stop working on yourself and trying to be a better husband, better wife, better partner, better father, better son, all these things.
Yep.
I think all these things today. It's not easy.
It's not. Well, I'll tell you this. One easy thing, close the friggin' bathroom door. I have such an issue with this. I can't even tell you. People say, oh, we've been together. It's so nice for so long. It's one of the best parts of being together so long is that you get to be comfortable. Nope. I don't fart in front of my man. I don't even always get undressed in front of him. I like to make it kind of special. Like he should want to see it. It's not always just out there, it's right. I think about how I don't wear ripped up clothing around my house. I'm always comfortable, by the way. But I love that because people say, well, I'm not comfortable. I'm comfortable all the time. You can be comfortable in things that match, that don't have holes, as well as you can be comfortable in something like that. But close the bathroom door. I say it's for men and women. Men and women. Men, don't burp in front of her, all that crap. If you want her to go down on you later, her first thought shouldn't be of you peeing in front of her. I'm sorry, it's not sexy. And part of the problem with living together and being together over time is that this familiarity just really is tough. So you really want to always be thinking, would I do that on the first date? Would I have peed in front of him on the first date? And I'm going to think no. So maybe don't do that now. And you Brits are a little better about this than Americans, but it just gets very, to me, too open. Like there's no secrets. There's nothing to know anymore. And it's wonderful to have something to know. It's wonderful to have some pieces that are yours and not everything. And it's wonderful to think about, how can I show up differently today? Do you know what I mean? For my partner. And how can I make him or her feel sexy and beautiful? And that's all part of the wonderful foreplay of a relationship.
I think what you're saying is absolutely right. And also I would add to this that if you are always growing, always trying to improve, always having new adventures, there's no time to be familiar with someone completely because you're becoming a new person. You're always evolving. And that's part of this, isn't it? It's putting the fun back into it. Then you're always going to have something more you can learn from each other and to grow. And that's what I would say. So I'm going to ask you another question now that sprung to mind again, because this is how I run my podcast. Whatever comes into my mind, I tend to ask. Great. You've obviously got a perfect relationship here to some degree. What do you do that irritates your husband? And what does he do that...
Oh, it's so funny. Again, it's funny. I was on a podcast not long ago and they do that. They say like, what's a pet peeve you have with your person? And I really don't hold that stuff. Like that's one of the beauties of of being together this long and being older, I have let go of a lot of stuff that I used to think was so important that does not feel so important to me anymore. I would say for sure, I have a lot of energy and a lot of optimism all the time. So, if we're going to someone's house for something, I'm going to bring 15 things instead of one. And then I'm very busy though, before we leave, trying to do the 15 things before I like to cook. So cooking all the things. And I'm sure that still irritates him to no end. Like, really, do we have to do this every time? Like every time you have to pretend this. But again, it's really talking about that stuff and talking about how you can be irritated by that, or you could find it kind of delightful in me that I am this way. I talk a lot about unconditional acceptance, not just unconditional love. And unconditional love is fine, but that's not the secret sauce of a happy relationship. It's unconditional acceptance. It's having him not just love me despite my enthusiasm and my over optimism, but because of that. Because there's lots of times it comes up, what's wonderful, right? We have things in our partners all the time that we love when they do it sometimes. I'm very controlling. And so sometimes that's great because I have all my ducks in a row and all the stuff packed and you got it, baby. You want to go on a trip, I'm your girl. And obviously there's times where my controlling behavior is very annoying. So you can't just decide, well, here I don't like it and here I do. No, sorry, this is me. It doesn't mean you might not lovingly joke, and he'll sort of be like, oh, I wouldn't have thought to bring a raincoat. Thanks, babe. I'm like, oops, sorry. It's like too control. And we'll laugh a little and I'll pull myself back because I don't want to be that person, so it's all good. But it doesn't have to be where you're just, oh, he's doing that thing and it pisses me off. And again, by the way, when you're doing that, you're focusing on the thing. And guess what? You'll see more of. So you've got to get to that place where, yes, of course, I'm human. Things annoy me in a moment. Things annoy him in a moment. But we don't live there. That's just not where we choose to live, because there's so many other things to be looking at. There's so many other things that are wonderful. And again, it's the definitions you give it. Oh, I hate when he does that. He doesn't think of me. He didn't, he doesn't make, I just had someone yesterday. She said, he never makes reservations. I'm always the one who has to plan everything. I'm always the one who's, making dinner. I have asked him over and over to just plan one romantic night for us. And I said, what are you doing? Like, obviously, if you've asked over and over, he's not good at that. He doesn't want to do that. He doesn't get it. Does he go when you do go? Does he have fun? And she said, well, yeah, we have a great time. I was like, what do you think it means for him to do it? And that's what we got to. To her, he didn't really love her. He's not really thinking she's important. And I said, that's showing up somewhere else. So let's talk about that. Let's get to that. It's not the making the thing. So I always want you to think, if something's bugging me, what's really bugging me? If something's making me angry, what's it? And anger, Celeste Ng said this in one of her books, anger is the bodyguard of fear. So when you're angry, you're just afraid about something. So what are you really afraid of? Again, always go a step deeper. If you want to change what's happening, you're going to have to do something different. If you're really ready, again, correct or effective, if you're really ready to have a really wonderful relationship and meet that great person and make that work, then whatever you were doing in the past, right, you're going to have to change some things. And now it's time to think differently. So you can be listening right now. I'm sure some people listening going, oh my God, she's Pollyanna. She's so full of it. Like, I can't stand it. That's fine. I love you. I love you anyway. And that's the truth. I do love you anyway. Because I love you. I get it. I understand. I've been there. And I'm telling you, again, do you want to be correct or effective? You could be correct all day that I'm full of it or whatever, or you could be effective and think, well, what could I take from what she's saying to start with? What could I start with? What could I expect that could be good? And could I question myself when I notice that men are sucking? Can I question that and think, oh, is my brain lying to me right now? Let me look for something good. Was there something good that I overlooked? What if I go and set an intention the next time I meet this guy to now set intention that we're going to have a great time, that we're really going to vibe, that he's going to really see who I am and I'm going to see who he is. What if I set that intention walking into the next date? Let's see what happens. And, really trying to align that stuff. That's the way to go. But yeah, I have to admit, I don't have a perfect relationship. However, I feel happy in it the vast majority of the time.
You can't ever have a perfect relationship. It's not possible because you'd be bored if it was perfect.
Yes.
Sometimes conflict is what makes you grow and it's what makes you develop. So it's an important part of this.
Yep.
I was thinking about my annoying habits. I sing quite a lot loudly and I do silly voices like impressions and things like that. And sometimes it's a lovely thing. My wife and kids love it. Other times it's the most annoying thing ever. And I say, if I'm in a bad mood, I'll be singing. If I'm in a good mood, I'm singing. If I'm quiet, that's when you've got to worry. Although my neighbours might disagree. I've discovered that they can probably hear me halfway down the street, even though we've got a detached house. So I'm a bit more self-conscious of that now, keeping my volume levels down.
Oh, it's awesome.
I think putting the fun back into anything is always important because you're always changing to do this.
Yep.
Now, another question for you as well, in terms of why people do fail and they get things wrong and making bad choices. Why do you think people make bad choices with online dating? Because I cover this quite a lot because I do online dating coaching a lot of one of the things that I do. I know you said you met your husband through online dating. So what do people, any top tips on that? I know we have to wrap up very soon because we've already reaching the limit. This is amazing.
We're chatting away, yeah.
Chatting away. So I'll stop waffling and you can tell me the answers to the question.
I think the thing that happens is that and I've helped many a client, right, with their sort of online profile or something, we've talked about it, is to not to lie. But I'm serious.
Yeah.
Don't put out who you are. If you really, don't like sports, don't pretend you do. Don't have a picture there of you with, waving some pennant, like, because you think, oh, men will like that. Don't it really be who you are. And I will tell you this, I'm with someone who he's outdoorsy. He runs marathons and obstacle races. I'm wearing stilettos right now. Like, I don't do this stuff. I don't know what to say.
So am I. Wow.
Oh, good. I bet they're as fabulous as mine.
Are they red like mine?
Yeah, whatever. But this idea that you have to share all these things in common isn't true. Now, I go to races with him and I support him, but I do other things during the day. I don't go sit at the race all day staring. Like, I'm not doing that. But I support him. I fill the bathtub with ice when he comes home, and back to the hotel maybe. And, it's nice and cold for him. And I get Gatorade. I do the things, but I'm not just running around after him. I think that there's some way that people are trying to please. They are trying, especially women. We are trying to be someone we're not, look like someone we're not. And it is harder these days because you if you're heterosexual female, because men do have all these choices, right? I mean, my gosh, just keep swiping. So there's this idea, but it's worked for me. It's worked for people I know. You really can just be who you are and be very honest and clear, because I have a lot of men in my practice, and I will tell you over and over, they do say, yeah, looks are great. Okay, get it. But they just want someone real. They don't want things to change after they've been together. That's what I hear. And they feel like they were sold one bill of goods and then another bill of goods comes later. And so believe people. That would be my second thing. Believe people. If he says, I'm not looking for a long-term relationship, believe him. You're not going to change it. You're not going to be the unicorn. You're not going to be the one who made it different. I can't tell you how many women I've sat with. And the man said, like, I don't like this. I do like that. I had one woman who was a little curvaceous, who was dating someone. And he said, well, I really don't like curvy women generally. And I said to her, get out of there. Like, you're curvy. Don't stay. And, it was not good, and he had sex with her. Yeah. They went out a few times, and he had said that first, like in the thing. And he said, but you look good or something, but you, whatever. But he said the thing. And I said, that's enough right there. Believe him. He doesn't like curvy women. You're a curvy woman who I hope likes yourself. So that's not your guy. There's lots of, I got a little junk in the trunk. My man loves it. Like, you got to find the people who love that, and so that you can keep loving yourself, because that's important too. So believe people, it would be my other piece.
That's great advice. I think you're right. Being authentic in your profile and in life is important. But if you haven't got much going on, if you're a bit boring, go and get some new hobbies and you might meet someone that way. Because sometimes just being yourself and being authentic is great. If it's not working for you, maybe you need to kick up the bum and do something else. Maybe do that walking on fire go into some of these seminars and try something. I think I don't like to hide behind that. But, and also, you're right, if someone said something to you, you can't change them because unless they really want to, and it's doubtful. So you're right, if they say something to you early on, they let things slip. So I'm just joking, or I didn't really mean it.
Yes.
That they hide behind that. They weren't joking.
They weren't joking. They weren't joking. And wait, I will say one final thing. When you walk away from any interaction with someone, I want you to notice how you feel. Do you feel nervous, enervated, drained, anxious, worried, or do you feel energized, enthusiastic, excited, anticipatory? I want you to really think about how you feel when you walk away. And certainly if you're not feeling good, if you felt like, oh, I'm a little worried about how I look or my this or my that, that is not your person. You really want to listen to yourself. So don't just believe what they say, believe what you say, believe what you're feeling, because people are meant, really those interactions should be energizing on some level. It really should. On some level, it should. And I don't mean the excitement of sex or whatever. I'm talking about on a soul level. Really listen to yourself.
That's fantastic advice to end this on, because you're right, any sort of relationship at all, not just dating, but friends, business, whatever it might be, you've got to be uplifted and feel positive. If you're really dreading speaking to them again or meeting them, it doesn't help. We're not going to sustain that. But I felt both times I've spoken to you, I feel really uplifted and positive. So that's a good thing.
I felt that way too.
Yeah, wonderful. That's wonderful. So if someone else wants to be uplifted, how are they going to find you?
I love it. My website is the easiest thing. It's the home of all my, social media and the podcast and the blog and the YouTube channel, and all the things are, and a lot of free resources are at abbymedcalf.com. So it's ABBYMEDCALF. It's a D as in Donald in there. It's very English, actually. So go to abbymedcalf.com, easiest way to find me, and you can follow me or do any of the things you want to do.
Fantastic. Hopefully some of my subscribers will check you out there and be in touch and follow you on Instagram and check out your reels that you've been filming and things like
there
that.
You go.
To your own podcast.
Every week.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I know that it's early for you. It's been wonderful. I know we'll talk again soon, but thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
You too.
Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to give you a free copy of my latest book, which you can download right now from my website, jamespriest.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love by taking a few seconds to write a positive review on the iTunes store right now. See you next time.